That's a funny comment. 15 minutes late to everything. Loves bagels. Thick accent when angry.
What is that? Where do you see that?
That's what they're saying about Jason in the
That is
YouTube.
so funny.
Typical. I'm like, okay, that's pretty funny, actually.
Justin, what are we talking
We're
about
live.
We've got a few subjects queued up.
Yes.
We've got, and I'm putting the tags for all the things we're going to talk about in the description. I'm also going to try to put every, like, if there's a key link relating to the story, in case you guys are here early and want to get some discussion going before we arrive and see what we're going to talk about and get up to speed. I'm putting that there. But so today we've got Ryan Breslow, our content partner from Bolt, has he's done another tweet that prompts a good discussion for us on if there's employee stock options are an area that needs innovation. Rachel and Nick worked on a story that Molly's been on for a long time, the Softbank, NVDA, ARM potential merger, but now it looks like SoftBank's going to maybe go for an IPO instead. And I don't know if we're going to get to those last two topics, but there's a pretty good blog post from Fred Wilson of Union Square Ventures. He's got a blog, avc.com, and he weighed in. So I think that link's in the description. So that's what's up for today. Molly, how was day one at the conference?
So far, I'm just here.
Oh, you're just around.
In the room. No, I haven't really done. Well, it doesn't actually. It's kind of great because it doesn't technically start till this afternoon. So I'm just doing this. I went to breakfast, but it was actually pretty awesome. I met, like immediately, the first person I met is the chief sustainability officer at HelloFresh, and I'm obsessed with HelloFresh. Like I've been using it for years. And I got it from my mom for Christmas. I'm at this conference called Green Biz. And I basically was like, okay, yes, I'm sure everybody hits you up about packaging immediately. He's like, yes, if you would like to yell at me about our packaging, I'm your guy. And I'm like, that's cool. But what I really want to talk to you about is the Tex-Mex paste, the most delicious ingredient that's ever been created in any food kit ever. And I'm just like, how do I make it and when can I buy it? And he was like, that's really funny because the top two questions that everybody asked me if they know HelloFresh are what's up with the packaging and what's up with the Tex-Mex paste. We're all obsessed with it.
That is so funny. How long have you been doing HelloFresh for?
Probably about 2 years. I think I've tried all of them.
Yeah.
I think I finally signed up for, because I used to do in the early part of the pandemic. Do you know Tavala?
I don't.
It's like a little oven. It's awesome, actually. It was a lifesaver for me during when the pandemic first started, because all the food delivery boxes were kind of overwhelmed and not really delivering. But Tavala was so small. Now I think they became an Oprah thing, so it's probably going to get more popular. But it's like a little Wi-Fi connected oven, which I know seems silly, but it's actually a really, really good little induction oven. And then you basically get fancy TV dinners. And you just, when you want to put them in the oven, you scan the QR code and it knows how long to cook it and what temperature, and it just sets it, and then it pings your phone when it's done.
Oh my gosh.
It's pretty good.
Adults is what it sounds like.
It's what?
It sounds like an easy bake oven for adults.
It totally, completely 100% is. It's the next generation of TV dinners and easy bake ovens.
Yeah.
But that was a lifesaver because they were already cooked and they were so small that nobody knew about them, and so they kept delivering. But then HelloFresh is I feel bad having meals delivered, and there's a lot of plastic, and all of that is totally true. But also,
mega sale right now.
It means I cook. Ooh,
this is what you're talking about?
Yes, and that oven is a game changer.
Okay.
I mean, is it air fryer too, or just an oven?
It is an induction oven, so it can do kind of like the air fryer thing. I mean, honestly, I have one of those houses that has I have two ovens, and I never use them. I just use that little thing. It's freaking awesome.
Air fryer.
What is that thing?
The Tavala. It's on Oprah. I was saying that this was my game changer meal delivery during the beginning of the pandemic because they were still really small and no one knew about them. And it's basically like fancy. See, you scan the little QR code, and then it sets the temperature and the cooking time, and then it pings you when it's done.
Wow, it's a replicator.
It's so great. But now I'm HelloFresh. All the way, I'm Team HelloFresh.
What is HelloFresh?
Oh,
it's a meal delivery kit, but it's cooking. Like you actually cook. But it's so great because like then I cook 3 nights a week because our DoorDash budget during pandemic was getting a little out of hand with my son at home.
Yeah, it can get pretty expensive with if you give a nice tip, you got $30-$40 on top of whatever you ordered in food.
Yeah, always.
I think maybe it's
especially because you feel so guilty. Like during the pandemic, I was just like, yeah, I'm tipping the highest amount possible.
I have I've told this before, this piece of advice to everybody. If you ever get affluent, then you do well. You're doing pretty well, Molly. I've done okay. Rachel and Justin, not so much, but give it time. First job out of school. It's going to be a little rough. Get some ramen. Don't donate to charity. Give huge tips. That's the charity the world needs. That's my approach.
Interesting.
People are like, would you like to give?
Or both.
I do both. Okay. I do actually do both, but I don't. Now I've been giving some donations, and I specifically tell them, don't put my name on it.
Yeah.
Don't put my name on it. Because what they want to do is they want to put your name in a book. And then there's like a whole bunch of levels. Silver, gold, platinum, diamond.
I suppose, titanium. Yeah, you don't want to end up in the book. That's not been an issue for me. Nobody thinks I'm in their platinum book.
Saw you in this book. Next one.
Yeah. What I try to be is the back end of fundraising. Like I ran my school auction for a lot of years, and I'm totally like, I will help you with fundraising as opposed to donating tons of my own money. But yeah, I'm an over tipper.
It's good to be over tipper. It's good.
Yeah.
It's good. Yeah, I got so many good tipping stories. I don't want to get into them right now,
But so that conversation got started because the first person that I met at the conference today at breakfast was the chief sustainability officer of HelloFresh, and I got so excited.
Oh, wow.
Because I was like, oh my God, I totally want to talk to you about packaging, but also the Tex-Mex paste, the most delicious food ever.
Yeah, I mean, if it's already prepared, is it less packaging or more packaging? Because when I had done one of those services for a little bit, and I thought it was cool, actually.
Yeah.
The one thing I didn't like was they gave me, for each ingredient, 7 different, because I had like one time General Tso's chicken or whatever, and it was like, here's this little plastic vial, this little plastic vial, this little, and I'm like, really? I feel like I'm like, it was too many plastic bottles.
It's a little laboratory. I know, totally. HelloFresh, you do cook the food, so it's like it's a whole onion and you chop it, like it's more manual, and so it's not quite as many little, but it will be like a little plastic package of curry spice or whatever, and then I'm like, ugh.
Yeah,
it's not ideal, but they've really evolved. The packaging overall has gotten a lot leaner, and it just is a game changer for me in terms. I mean, we have like cooked variety of healthy foods at my house as opposed to ramen again, like literally like, should we get pho or Indian food? Like it was getting bad. It's getting bad.
Do they send you 3 meals at once, or do you get 3 boxes a week?
No, it's 3 meals at once.
Got it. Oh, so that goes back to like, I remember in Brooklyn, like in the 90s, 2000s, started like having this like hipster food co-ops. They would bring you a box of stuff from the farm, upstate New York. You just paid $50 a week, and you just get this huge box of more than you could eat. And then those people were just constantly giving people vegetables and food.
Yes, that is a big CSA boxes are super popular here, and it leads to everybody being like, I got a bunch of fish today. Do you want to have dinner? Or like, do you need any zucchini?
Yeah.
What are those
or what is this? There's a lot of what is this?
The ugly vegetable company. I think that's a great idea. I love that idea.
It's genius.
Yeah.
Ugly vegetable company.
It's like they send you a bunch of it's not
imperfect produce.
Imperfect produce. I was close. Ugly vegetable.
Or imperfect foods. But yeah, they're basically like there's all these fruits and vegetables that Americans won't buy because they have like their carrots a little bumpy, So then they send you the ugly cast off so that they don't get wasted. It's pretty clever.
We had those recently because we're going on a little bit of a health kick here with the Jelly Bellies. So at the Jelly Belly factory, they will give you like a 5-pound bag of imperfect Jelly Bellies. And, I just take a handful of those, spread them out on the desk. Then I sort out the like butter popcorn and coconut horrible flavors, and then
Ew.
I got the good flavors. No, butter popcorn, you don't need to make that one anymore. That's like
No,
the
it's
worst
disgusting.
possible.
That's pretty funny as health kicks go too. Good.
Yeah. But anyway, they're imperfect. So you get like 3 cinnamon, cherry ones together, and you're like, God, that looks like a freak, like these freak show jelly beans, but they're good.
I mean, it's pretty clever. Like literally people just were throwing away, like farmers and ranchers just throwing away like tons and tons and tons of produce. And they were like, what if we just sell? The chat says the noties say Misfits Market is similar.
Misfits
Great.
Market,
Love it.
When I lived in LA, speaking of markets, they had an under non-pasteurized like milks and cheeses market.
For the good stuff.
And people were like, oh yeah, this is the greatest thing ever. And then like somebody dies because they were drinking unpasteurized milk. Like they literally got an E. coli breakout. Somebody died. And then they were like, they shut them down. Like the Venice Underground. I felt like I was going to like, like a drug den. They were like, there's a door and you knock 3 times. Somebody lets you in. Then there's like a waiting room. Then you go in. I was like, this is like a scene from Euphoria or something like that.
I mean, get over it, America. I'm just saying.
Boil the milk. You kill the bacteria in it and you'll be okay. Or don't drink milk. That's another option.
I mean, if you go to the underground market to buy unpasteurized milk and cheese on purpose, you're taking your life in your hands.
It was
You're
a
not
lot
allowed
of
to make that choice.
A lot of bacteria. I mean, you can go back to, the times of Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones and, have food kill you. Sure. Why not? It's charming.
The cheese is better.
Not for me.
All right, I'm going to send my tweet and then...
Oh, is it tweet time? Yeah. I don't have my tweet sent. Here we go. Oh, God, with Ryan. I mean, is like the Ryan King going to shut up at some point? I mean, he's just taking over the media cycle every week. It's just... This guy should be the 4th producer of the pod.
Exactly. Like he's crushing it.
Yeah.
At that.
It's good topics too.
I agree.
I don't agree. I agree. It's good topics. I agree.
It's good topics.
He's going for the, it's always good to go for class warfare. Nothing works better than pitting the 10% of society against the 2%, against the 1%, against the 0.1%. That is.
And I think what's interesting about Ryan too is he's going after a massive group of people. He's essentially going after any successful founder who went through YC and raised, and the entire like YC industrial complex, which is full of really smart and sometimes combative people. And those people are now fighting everything he says on Twitter. So you have like 2 entrenched, intelligent groups of people kind of battling it out in real time with interesting points on both sides. And I think it's just a cool thing that's happening. You just reading it, you're like learning in real time.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
No, you don't think that?
I'll say it's like a retread. Like I remember talking about all these issues that he's bringing up on the pod, 4 years ago, 7 years ago.
Play the tag.
It feels like.
I think it's a retread for you.
It's a retread for me,
not for everyone.
Yeah, no, it feels like
he's 27.
Greatest hits album of.
He's 27, exactly. He's 27. He
7
just
years
got
ago,
here.
he was not done with Stanford.
It's so annoying how the kids have to learn these lessons all over again.
It's actually a good point. Like you'll see in the story, like we have a tweet from Jeff Richards, who basically says the same thing you just did, Jason. He's like, everybody tried this in the 90s. It was a disaster. Like it went really, really poorly. And then Ryan replied to him, it was just like, this is what my employees chose, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, listen, I don't blame his intent. Okay, let's get started.
Let's talk about it so that I am at 8 minutes, 6, 7, 8, 9 seconds.
Great. Jason?
I'm at 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. Twist taping, Tovala. Get the oven. I remember when this came out. Yeah.
That's so great.
I had them on the pod, I believe, when the first
really?
version was terrible. Looked terrible. I like it. Yeah. What is that super smart oven with a camera in it? I want a camera in my oven. That's the level of preciousness. June?
Yeah. There's some good, maybe. There's some good I wouldn't have thought a connected oven would be so. Honestly, now I just use the oven all day, every day, but never for anything related to the internet,
There are like
every freaking thing in that thing. It's amazing.
Well, it gets hotter faster. Like heating up your whole oven is this giant, it's capable of putting in a turkey. Like what if you're just having a Sammy? You don't need that. We don't need that.
Couple little broccoli. So great.
We don't need a Thanksgiving oven for every day. It's like a waste. Although I will say for bacon, my bacon game's getting very strong now. When you have 3 daughters, like I go through a pound of bacon in 10 seconds. And
you know how girls are about.
Yeah, mine are. I'm raising Amazons over here. I mean, literally, it's like, what's the island that Wonder Woman's from?
Oh yeah,
Dara something. I don't know. It'll come to me. That's literally what I'm running. I took my daughter to archery on Saturday. Skiing. I mean, it's turning into I teach them taekwondo. I'm punching. They're going to capoeira. Guns. I've taught my 12-year-old knows how to use a firearm.
Next up is skinning animals and using their pelts to stay warm.
Themyscira.
Thank
you. Damn it. That was killing me. I'm like, Thermopylae? That's not a thing.
Thermopolis?
Calcanus Everdeen. Good one. Yep. That's what's happening over there. They're ready for the apocalypse.
May the games forever be in your favor. Is that the line? Games be in your favor or something?
You were close.
Millennials, help me out here. May the games forever be in your favor.
No, the odds, right?
The odds. Oh, may the odds forever be in your favor.
All right, let's do this.
I can't fuck with the Hunger Games because of what they did to Stanley Tucci. My man should not.
I don't want to talk about it.
My man should not.
He was the best part of those movies, though. But yeah, they dressed up like a clown.
Don't dress Stanley Tucci up like a clown.
Just let him be bald.
He's got to be in a Armani, a Xenia suit, or
like
he should be in a nice black T-shirt with a nice pair of shorts.
Yeah.
Are you guys watching his show?
I'm not.
Where he goes and speaks Italian, and
he does like little snippets of cooking, and it's just so delightful. He's just the best.
I want Stanley Tucci to sit by my bed and read me a cookbook. That's what I want Stanley Tucci to do.
All right, let's get it going. Can you do the tweet thread from Ryan, picture in picture? I have everything else on the. I have all other quotes from that first story.
Just not the noties here.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, I did get followed by Bella Thorne in the celebrity categories.
Yeah,
because of our poster for the Bonnie and Clyde.
I was wondering if it was going to end up as a cease and desist. She's like, "I'm sorry, who the hell are you?"
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't agree to do your movie.
Why do I not know about this movie that I'm in?
But she wants to be a billionaire, so I think that's like probably the connection there. And then in more important news, this could be a serious bromance starting. All apologies to my other bromances. Adam Paul Scott followed me. I don't know if you know Adam Scott.
Adam Scott? Adam Scott?
Yeah, Adam Scott from Hot Tub Time Machine, The Good Place,
Yeah.
Parks and Rec.
Brothers, Adam Scott?
Does he have brothers? I don't know. But he's born in 1973. I'm born in 1970. We're both Gen X. I feel like this could, he's also a director, writer. Like, I feel like we could hang. I feel like it'd be like a hang.
We are so spoiled in the Bay Area with our good water. Phoenix doesn't have very good water.
Oh, you're in
Side note, Scottsdale's water.
Where you are, or you're
It's just the tap water.
No, I know, but are you saying where you are now, the name of the conference, the location, or are you?
Oh yeah.
You off the grid? You're I mean, it's public that you're at a tech conference.
I already told the noties. I'm at Green Biz.
Green Biz, which is a sustainability conference. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So let me see. Where are my noties? I like to see the chat. Put the live on. There we go. All right, great. Give a thumbs up for your squad. Let's break the old algorithm here. I don't need to see myself big. I need to see that chat room. Good. You can also pop out the chat. That's a nice feature. I don't know if you've been doing that. Pop out the chat.
YouTube?
On YouTube, you can pop out the chat. Yeah, it's kind of nice. But I don't know if I can make it. Oh, you can make it bigger. There you go. Don't need my glasses. All right. So travel was okay? Was it crazy on the flight? Everybody's still wearing masks, obviously.
Yeah, jam-packed flight, but nobody punched anyone, so yay for that.
Oh, good. Yeah, nobody.
So much coughing, though. So much coughing all around. I mean, nice. I'm feeling okay, but I still was just like.
You had it. You're Superwoman. You're Captain Marvel now. You're Dark Phoenix.
Totally.
They can't.
But you could. It was mainly just funny to watch everybody look all nervous. But yeah, I was like, I'm wearing a cloth mask. I'm not even busting out the KN95 for this. Like,
I don't think you can get it again. I think
the mosquito.
The mosquito.
In news I'm trying to ignore, they're suggesting that you might be able to get the BA2 variant again, that it can reinfect even after blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you know what? Close that tab. I'm just closing the tab.
Close tab. No reopen tab on that one.
I don't want to know.
Don't want to know. I think.
All right, let's do this.
Because
we have female founders to hear from after this.
All right, you want to read? You want me to read?
I'll read.
Okay, 3, 2.
All right, we're back. We are so grateful to Ryan Breslow for his continuing contribution to the content of our show. Of course, we are referring to Bolt CEO Ryan Breslow, who rocketed himself into the news recently by taking on the Stripe and PayPal mafia, breaking that story to the whole entire world. Then maybe like stepping down as CEO. And I think maybe he's got like a new company that he's trying to build, and then blew up the internet, at least BC internet, yesterday by tweeting about how he wants to innovate on Bolt's stock option program, which he believes is designed to be more employee friendly. And I feel like this is a good chance to get some of Jason's knowledge in here on how this stuff normally works before we get to sort of like what he's trying to do in his weird, can I just say, very telemarkety sounding tweet thread.
Yeah, he's kind of selling this stuff hard right now, but we do appreciate the content. We've talked about the issue of stock options. I mean, he's kind of like the fourth producer here. Thank you for.
He really is. He
gives us like a story a week. It's great.
I didn't have like an obvious headline today until boom.
Yeah,
thanks,
guy. So there's a lot to unpack here. So for people who are new to stock options, when you go work for a startup, you get paid very well typically, unless it's in the bootstrapping phase when there's no money. And those people get a lot of stock. They bootstrap. They maybe take no salary for 6 to 12 months while they try to raise money, or they might take a small draw if it's, the company's been funded, with $100K or something by friends and family or the founders. So when you start hiring employees, you make something called an ESOP, ESOP, employee stock option plan. When you create an ESOP, there are standards for an ESOP. So when a board starts having board meetings at your startup, a VC joins the board, a seed fund joins the board, you want to retain talent. They're coming for the adventure of a startup, to have great responsibilities and be a leader in a company that's starting with just 10 people. And there's some lottery tickets given out. Those lottery tickets are called stock options. If you were lucky enough to work at Google, Apple, Facebook, Twitter, etc., those lottery tickets paid off. My friend Chamath Palihapitiya was a venture capitalist, had worked at AOL, and the way he became Chamath was he got the lottery ticket of Facebook stock options, right? So how does it work? You're granted a certain number of shares from this ESOP. An ESOP is typically 10% of the shares of a company taken out of the founder shares. So the two founders own 80%, they sell 20% to angels. Then a venture round comes along, they dilute another 20%, maybe they get down to 70 or so percent, and then they give 10% of their shares to the employees, typically. Or sometimes those shares can be added and everybody takes the 10% dilution at the same time. Generally speaking, Molly, the VCs who are buying 10% of the company do not want to add the stock option pool the next day and go down to 9%. It seems kind of unfair, right? So usually it comes out of the founder shares. And it can be refreshed over time. The company gets bigger. They might add, 5% more shares, 2% more shares. An employee vests those shares over 4 years. If they leave the company, they have to do something called exercise, which means they have to buy the shares. Because when you're getting these shares, they're not just gifted to you. In big companies like Facebook or Google, they might give you RSUs, restricted stock units. They actually just gift you the shares. You pay tax on them. And they're literally just giving you the shares. They show up in your E-Trade account or Robinhood account or Morgan Stanley account. Yep. And you pay tax on them. You get a $100 share, you pay some tax on it. And I think those get treated as income. Now, if you have stock options, the option to buy them, there's a strike price of a penny a share. At the seed round, it's $1. At the Series A, it's $3. And let's say at the Series B, it's $5. Or let's say it's even $10. You had a strike price of a penny for it. That means you were given that with the option to buy the share for a penny. If you sell it at the $5 price, you have a gain of $4.99, yada, yada. if you, what he's talking about here in his tweet storm, then that's all fine.
Right.
When people
So that's
leave
the way it works.
It's the way it currently works,
Generally. And it's been through some iterations, which we'll get to.
There are some iterations. The number one iteration is the exercise window. Typically, when you leave a company, whether you leave or you're fired, involuntary or voluntary, that doesn't affect your shares. They don't get to take them away because they fired you. So maybe let's say you did all 4 years, and on day one of year 5, you left. Now you got 4 years worth of stock options. Let's say they're now worth $1 million. You hit the jackpot. It's a lottery ticket. You have to exercise them, which means you have to pay whatever that strike price was. Now, if it was $1, you may have to come up with, and you had 1 million of these or 10 million of these shares, whatever it happens to be, or you would have to pay that money to the company to buy your shares. Mm-hmm. But these are illiquid shares. So you're basically paying, let's say it was $10,000 to exercise your shares. You pay them, but you can't sell them. In other words, you come out of pocket for them. And so sometimes people come out of pocket with them. Other times people just let them expire because you have 30 to 90 days, depending on how they set them up. Typically, I think 60 to 90 is the standard. So you have a little bit of time to get the money together. You have to sell other equities or whatever. And you have to make that determination. A lot of companies are now making the exercise window 3, 5, or 10 years. In other words, if you came to the company, you got a full 10 years at any point to exercise them. If the company goes public, you would just get issued your shares. If the company were to sell, they would give you the difference between the two. But what he's saying here is he points out that some executives do something funky. Big executives who are joining the company later, if they're sophisticated, they're already millionaires, they may want to get long-term capital gains. Long-term capital gains is when you sell shares that are older than a year old, and you may want to start your tax treatment when you buy those shares. So they'll do something called an early exercise. So let's say it did cost $10,000 sometimes, or maybe it cost $100,000. The company will give that CEO the $100,000 in a loan to buy it, but they don't actually give them the $100,000. It's just done with paperwork. And they will give a loan to buy those shares now. That loan is collateralized by that individual, the CEO's, home, whatever. If the company goes out of business, it's probably no recourse. In other words, they're not going to go try and get it from you. And that usually doesn't happen. But then you, on a personal basis, and the company has on their books this loan. It's hard to manage. It's a bunch of paperwork. Typically costs $1,000, $2,000 to do the paperwork for this. And you do it for senior executives who want to be able to early exercise their shares to get better tax treatment down the road. He's saying,
and partly we should say, it's yes, so that they can get better tax treatment down the road. We should also clarify that when you're talking about those early executives, it's usually a very large amount of stock, right? It's a big chunk of options compared to what you might be giving your everyday employees.
It could be $10 million in shares for a company like Boltz. If they were going to hire a CEO, CEO might get 1 to 5% of the company in shares. So let's say it was a $500 million company. They give them a $25 million options package to stick around for 4 or 5 years. For a world-class CEO, that's not crazy because they could start their own company or join an earlier stage company and get 10%, or start the company themselves and get 70%. So boards are dealing with competing offers, or if it's somebody that senior, they could get a senior vice president job at a Google or Facebook for a couple $1 million in options a year, right? So you have to compete for those elite employees who have been to the dance before and done this. So that's why they do it. And so he kind of took that and was like, hey, everybody should have everything. The problem is, if you can't afford the $10,000 or $5,000 to exercise your options, should you really be taking out loans? And then these loans really do affect the balance sheets of people personally. I think you would have to disclose this if you were going to go buy your first home or something. And I'm not sure you would get canceled for that, but you would also, the company has to, my understanding is the company has to keep track of all these, and it's a liability for the company.
Right. Let's back up to what he's proposing, because we have jumped ahead to analyzing the proposal. So his problem statement basically is that there is this issue where an employee leaves and they might not have the money to come up with the cash to exercise the option, one, and that two, it's not fair that executives at companies get this treatment, this loan up front, and this ability to, reap the tax benefits of their options.
Yeah.
Right from the jump. So he is proposing that at Bolt, they're going to fix this by allowing every employee, if I understand this correctly, to get this early exercise option, which is in fact a loan from the company that allows employees to exercise their options earlier. If though, and this is the drawback, and he says this many times throughout his tweet thread, if the options end up underwater, when the employee wants to leave, they're still personally on the hook for the loan.
Yep.
Right.
I guess the company could theoretically forgive the loan. I think that's what would happen in that situation. And there are some things in law that, like are liabilities, or there could be edge cases, but they don't normally happen. So in the course of, these things happening, a board would typically, if somebody left, they were underwater, they might just forgive the loan or something like that. But he does point out it's a liability. I'm not saying it's bad that he is offering this to folks. Like, I wouldn't say it's bad. There might be somebody who has enough money that they feel comfortable taking this. Maybe it's their second or third time at the rodeo. But this is largely solved by giving a longer, window to exercise, right? So people don't lose it. And if you're affluent, you could always just buy the shares, right? As somebody else pointed out, you could just give RSUs to people and pay their taxes, which is what the Googles and Facebooks of the world do. So
also,
anyway,
I have kind of a dumb question.
Yeah, sure.
Maybe it's not that dumb.
There are no dumb questions when it comes to tax law and stock options. It's wildly complex.
Stock options are something that you are given at a company either to incentivize them to stay there because you are paying them less than market rate. And you're
that used to be why. That
used to be why. But now it's sort of like, it's an added bonus or whatever. And it engenders your loyalty and potentially becomes a golden handcuffs thing. But like, if you leave, isn't that just on you?
Yeah.
Like, you left. Like, why? I don't understand why these companies are bending over backwards to make sure that employees who leave have the option to buy their shares for like 10 years.
Yeah. So the reason is, you would want to imagine yourself in the situation where you hired somebody, they did a great job for 4 years, but they moved to another state, they retired, they started a family. Do you want to penalize them for 4 great years of service they gave you? Or do you want them to keep their lottery ticket that they can cash in later if the ponies happen to, win, place, or show? So it's a loyalty to the employee to let them, get the win and then build goodwill. People who didn't do this or were sharky about these kind of things, then the employees leave. They tell other people, hey, that founder, the board, they're horrible people. I don't have my options. What options in these lottery tickets really do is they perpetuate the dream of Silicon Valley. 80, 90% of startups fail. 1 in 10, 1 in 5, maybe these options become worth something. That's kind of part of the dream of what we do in tech and in startups. It's our value proposition. You want to go to Netflix, today in 2022, you get safety, security, RSUs. You want to go to Netflix in 1980, 99 or 2002, you get massive unknowns, hard work, more opportunity, and these lottery tickets. So I think you want to be loyal to folks and give them that opportunity to still win the lottery. When people hear those stories about the receptionist or the chef or the artist at Google or Facebook making $10 million or $50 million, one group of people, small-minded people, think, oh, that wasn't worth it. And then the savvy folks say, yeah, but that got everybody to buy into what we're doing here. And the company became worth $1 trillion. Who cares if somebody who didn't deserve it, or ostensibly didn't deserve it, who deserves anything, right? Like, does the chef deserve it for coming in and working 12 hours a day? Does the receptionist, or does the salesperson who was, not a great contributor, but, still stuck it out for 3 years and became worth 10 million? Are they worth it? I don't know.
Right. So Ryan acknowledges that it is interesting because one of the things he points out is that some companies have stopped, like they tried to mitigate this issue by extending that window, and then some have stopped, which he then hashtags the mob. The mob. So there was somebody
from Y Combinator who was pushing this as a theory, like we should extend the windows. I think actually Sam Altman was very public about saying.
Oh, well, he's saying the mob actually pushed to then shorten the windows again.
Yeah,
and so
maybe
Scott
they
Cooper
flipped.
actually from A16Z blogged that in 2016 he blogged that, quote, a 10-year exercise window is really a direct wealth transfer from the employees who choose to remain at the company and build future shareholder value to former employees who are no longer contributing to building the business and its ultimate value.
Yeah, that's somebody who pulls the ladder up behind them. It's nonsense.
Yeah.
If you put the time in, you earn the shares. It's not a drag on everybody else.
Like you work there and you sign the terms of the deal, or you got the shares. You should get to buy them. Okay. So, well, then Ryan is trying to then avoid that, but let's go back to this personal risk question, because again, it doesn't like he really does think he's doing this really forward thinking thing for his employees, it seems, in his telemarketing thread. It's
again, I don't doubt his intent at all.
I do not, no. But when a thread is that sort of like promotional about how great it all is, it starts to feel like, is it so great though? I'm not really sure. And what our producers have wisely pointed out is that it feels like there's a specific risk for Bolt employees here that they could end up underwater.
Yeah, again, I don't think the company is going to be chasing those loans if they do them. So it's probably a theoretical. And maybe there could be, like, if you go to get other loans, depending on the size of this, could come up as a liability. Again, if let's say you were going to get a down payment on a house, or you're trying to get a second mortgage or a home equity line, I'm not sure. Because again, usually people who are not yet wealthy don't do these kind of funky loans or margin loans or these kind of loans. Mm-hmm. This is kind of like when you've got enough cheddar that you could actually pay the loan if the worst case scenario happened. It wouldn't be fun, but it would be, it wouldn't be the risk of ruin. So I think that's the issue here is like, do you want to have a loan hanging out there? That could be called, right? The loan could be called theoretically. So, it's rich people have and affluent people who have their stack already think differently. Like this quote from Scott above, to go back to that for a second, of like, the people who work 4 years versus people who work 10 years. Well, you could say the same thing about people who own Microsoft shares. Who don't work at the company. Right. Are they a drag? Right. If I own Apple shares, am I a drag? Am I a drag on Uber or Robinhood because I own shares publicly? No, I'm a supporter.
I think he's not talking about people who own shares down the road. He's talking about the exercise window. Like, should you allow people who no longer work there the option to exercise and buy that 10 years later? I'm not arguing that it sounds a little stingy the way that he phrased it. I'm just clarifying that he means the window specifically.
Here's the stupid thing about Scott's comment. The people who are working there past 4 years, 5 through 10, they get more options for continuing to stay there. And the people who leave that startup and go to another one get options in the next startup. Everybody gets some options, generally speaking, unless it's a company like MailChimp that said, or I think 37 Signals, who just said, we're just going to pay you higher than market rate. We're going to give bonuses instead. And so you get the cash now. And for people who would like an extra $20K a year, that's a better option for you. So again, Ryan, thanks for bringing up a topic that we've all rehashed endless times. Well,
that was what was so
Ryan's
interesting.
Becoming a virtue signal. He's becoming annoying because it's like somebody who just discovered startups being like, hey guys, do you know there's an option window and there's an issue around this? It's like, yeah, I've been in this board meeting 50 fucking times when we talked about it. Like, yes, we all know about this issue. We've all hashed it out, dude. He's like, I have a new idea. And it's like, no, you don't. He's like the annoying.
Very young. The next generation has to learn the lessons all over again.
He's the annoying kid in the back of like a screenwriting class. And he's like, have you guys seen Pulp Fiction? And we're like, yes. Did you guys ever see Seven Samurai? Yes, we know who Kurosawa is. Yes.
Jeff Richards, a partner at GGV and a guest on Angel Season 4, Episode 9, replied to Ryan with the following: for what it's worth, almost every private company in Silicon Valley did this in the 90s, which I do remember. He says it was an absolute disaster. Employees spent years paying back loans for worthless stock, tax bills for merely exercising, etc. I'm not in the mob, but unfortunately lived through it firsthand as a founder.
Yeah, there are tax issues too, when you exercise these.
I mean, I remember people getting hit with that, with the AMT, the alternative minimums tax back in the 90s on options that appeared to be worth more than they were worth. And it was like, it really came close to ruining some people. And then Ryan, because this is what the next generation always does, responded and said, over half of our employees chose this. Plus, I would strongly encourage my family and friends to choose this, but VC says it didn't work in the 90s, so it's a disaster. VC Twitter pumps the tweet. This is why VC-run companies are never able to make strides for employees.
Again, he's just
the Robin.
He's the Robin Hood of CEOs. If you know what, Ryan, if you're so like precious and amazing, like take the 25% of the company you own and distribute it amongst your employees and keep 5%. If not, STF you. I mean, really, with the virtue signaling every day, it's like I was like, I invited him to come on the pod. I was like, this would be an interesting discussion with the mob stuff. Now it's like, please, somebody else have him as a guest, because I'm finding Ryan increasingly like virtue signaling and annoying. And it's just the way he presents it. Like, you could present this as a question, right? You could say, is this a good idea? Or here's what we're doing. I'm looking for some feedback. Now he's kind of gone full bore that everybody's an idiot except for him.
Yes.
And I think that's probably like he's overplaying his hand. And
I mean, look, it's the kind of thing you can do when you're retired, right? From your Fortune 100 company that you built from the ground up. But I mean, eventually Ryan is going to have to raise again, one assumes, and Bolt has already raised at many multiples, if I understand that correctly. Yes, a high multiple, 61x and 183x price to sales, and might be looking at a down round.
He's ahead of his skis right now, for sure.
He is ahead of his skis. That's a good
But a lot of companies are who raised in the last 2 years, so it's not unique to him, in fairness.
Yeah. I mean, it is very true that VC Twitter was not having it, including you yourself.
Well, it's more like, gosh, when literally you have this conversation 50 times with 10 different sets of lawyers from all the top people, and you literally come down to the same, dead ends, which is the IRS and tax law. If you get something of value, you have to pay your taxes. And this whole dream of not having to pay your taxes or pay less taxes, like when you're focused on this kind of stuff, the tax optimization stuff, it kind of tells me you're not focused on the core business. That's the red flag for me all the time. Like, if there's really only one thing you can do to pay less taxes, and, there's really like a small subset of things, move to a low tax state, and create trusts, I guess.
Also, I mean, honestly, like, I'm not trying to be
or pay your taxes
over here, but pay your freaking taxes.
Or
how
pay
about
your
that?
Taxes. Yeah. I mean, like, every time I pay taxes, it's like, I'm like, oh my God. Like when I paid my first 7-figure tax bill, you're like, oh, I can't believe I'm paying this. And then you're like, oh, but I get the rest. All right. It's not the end of the world, right? Like, you could just kind of.
And I mean, I like the person who was like, issue them RSUs and pay their taxes. Why don't you do that? That would actually be better. That's better than sticking your employees with a loan. It's funny because yesterday on the show, I talked about buy now, pay later. Yeah. And I was reading this and I was like, this is the buy now, pay later of employee stock option plans. And it seems like you're going to end up in all the same trouble that you're going to end up with. Like, if you can't afford it, you shouldn't have it.
It's like people taking margin loans against their crypto or trading on margin on Robinhood. Like, listen, I'm fine with people getting educated about these things and doing it in a small way. Like, if they had a margin loan for 25% of their Bitcoin's value, whatever the high watermark of the last 2 or 3 downturns were. Okay. But this other way where you're, leveraging up 2, 3, 4, 5x on some funky exchange on a,
50,
island somewhere in, a sunny location with very few laws. Like, no. Be careful, folks.
Well, and when they wash out and they lose everything, it only helps hedge funds, right? So, like, at the end of the day, this loan scheme, if people can't afford to pay it back, it's not going to help them.
Like, I'm going to say another thing. Like, if you like to gamble, like, you don't need to take a margin loan on your 25 dime bet on the Jets. It's like, I have a $25,000 bet on the Jets this Sunday. Like, you've already got a huge problem in your life that you bet on the Jets. Now you're like, I'm going to margin loan my Jets bet. Like, that's what
like the real problem here is the team you're betting on. Not.
I'm just talking about the teams that perennially have the worst luck. Like, if I don't bet on the Knicks, like, being a Knicks fan is enough suffering that you don't need to add gambling on top of it. If I want to gamble, I gamble on the Warriors, where, like, at least, they pull miracles, on a regular basis, not the Knicks who are just dream killers.
Jason, that's actually I know that you're joking, but that's a really good comparison if you think about as sports books have become institutionalized, you're not allowed to bet on credit anymore. Whereas with bookies, you always bet on credit.
Yeah,
whereas for FanDuel, you actually have to deposit the money from your bank account into your FanDuel account before.
Yes. That's a good point. Let me say it.
It's a great point, yeah.
I mean, when I grew up in Brooklyn, there were bookies. And if Artie wanted to take your bet, you just tell him. And I would watch guys, give me 2 dimes on the Jets, give me 5 on whatever, the Giants. And you were on essentially margin. If you didn't pay, there was a VIG, 5% a week. So if you put a $5,000 bet, you didn't pay, you just paid $500 a week in interest.
Wow.
10% maybe the VIG, right? And you still had to pay back the principal. So, it got a little hairy for folks. If you're now, as we know, sports betting and wagering is becoming legal in the United States, yada, yada, I'm totally pro that. People should be able to do what they want with their money, Vegas or bet on sports. It's fine. It's entertaining. If you got a problem, make a phone call, get help, yada, yada. But when you use these fantasy sports sites or you're betting, you have to have a deposit for a reason.
Yep.
Because gamblers do get ahead of their skis and they do something called chase it. You don't want to be chasing it.
I think chase it seems like a good segue actually to our NVIDIA. And
this is why I don't gamble, Molly.
Right. I know. I'm like, your gambling rules, if I'm being honest, are a little bit all over the place here.
I found a way to gamble that is net positive for the planet and for humanity. Bet on entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of a rigged game. If you have good access, you're only need to hit one every 100 or 200 investments. The odds are basically stacked in your favor. That's why I was like, if you were in my book Angel, I was like, it's kind of like I'm playing in a card game where I get all the aces and kings and you don't. Like, that's deal flow, right? When you have great deal flow,
right,
whether you're at YC or the Mob or Andreessen or Sequoia, it's kind of like somebody's like, here's all the aces and kings from the deck. Go ahead, place your bets, because people come to you first.
Yeah.
All right, segue.
Chasing things. NVIDIA has been chasing a big chip merger for a long time, in this case with ARM, and it seems to have backfired. And this deal fell apart a few days ago. But what is interesting about it, I think, to us, is that it's yet another SoftBank story. So SoftBank acquired ARM, the big chip maker, in 2016. Pivoted the business by making this big bet on Internet of Things devices. So they just made like smaller and smaller chips to go into connected devices in homes. Started to ignore the money printing markets, and it seems to have backfired. Now this deal with NVIDIA and ARM fell apart over antitrust concerns, and ARM is sort of out in the cold, and SoftBank is trying to figure out what to do with them. So this is a little bit of a yes/no IPO story, I think, as we dig a little deeper. But what's interesting about it is that it was intended always to develop architecture for chips and processors and semiconductors. They don't manufacture chips themselves. They just designed the architecture. IPO'd in 1998. Apple used to own about 15% of the company. And then in 2016, SoftBank acquired ARM for $32 billion because, Masa was super into the IoT thing. He was like, this is definitely going to work. And then I think he took them private.
Yeah.
And then now, like, who knows what happens? Who knows what happens? And I guess the question becomes sort of like, is this a whiff for SoftBank? Was it just a miss, and now they're going to have to eat this $32 billion acquisition on some level? I mean, leaving aside what this means for NVIDIA, it's just a super interesting, to me, SoftBank and ARM story.
Yeah. And I guess NVIDIA was going to buy them. And
yep. NVIDIA was going to acquire them. And they wanted to buy them for $40 billion in cash and stock, meaning, by the way, that ARM's valuation would have gone up only $8 billion since SoftBank acquired it in 2016. NVIDIA has been crushing it lately, $650 billion company. Its stock price is up about 70% over the last five years. And they wanted to become a chip powerhouse with this, but they spent 18 months trying to get this deal done. and it was just a huge antitrust,
Yeah, I mean,
blocker.
this is one of the high stakes problems that we're going to see more of. If you don't have the save of acquisitions and mergers available to companies when they stumble, then they could go into kind of a debt spiral, or not that I'm saying they're going to go into a debt spiral, but you're taking a major option off the table for an exit. So now they have to go public, but who's going to want to buy the stock in a company that's in decline or sideways? So what do? You then would have to manage it for profits and maybe cut staff and cut investment and then try to make profits off of it to try to make your money back. You see how this becomes a quick debt spiral because you need investment capital in order to compete, and it's an arms race out there. No pun intended.
No pun intended.
With these chip manufacturers, and you see Apple making their own, and this is not going to be pretty. But SoftBank can afford a couple of flops, and these things are always a matter of price. So if the price gets low enough, somebody could snap it up. Or if the price is low enough, there could be some sort of a buyout that occurs. And so we saw that actually with WeWork, right? Sometimes you just got to take the medicine and reprice an asset. We saw it with Peloton, reprice the asset. Now all of a sudden, Peloton starts rising again because they repriced it. They reset everybody's expectation. Investors get wiped out. We'll see with this one, but I think the higher order, more interesting thing for me here is, SoftBank swings for the fences. Sometimes they win a couple of billion, sometimes they lose a couple of billion, sometimes they make tens of billions. They'll be fine because they're playing the game slightly differently. They're doing this late stage, try to make a couple of $1 billion, but on a percentage basis, it might not be as juicy as being a Series A investor or something. But yeah, if we're going to block mergers and acquisitions, if the company is in decline, then you have to start thinking about the employees of that company, the survival of that company, maybe taking away a landing strip for that company. And who's going to buy it now? It's too expensive for most people to buy. What is Facebook going to buy it and start making chips or something? Like, who's going to buy this thing? If not another chip manufacturer or another provider of who's going to use these chips in some way to get an advantage. So like if Peloton's small enough that an acquisition is tiny as a fraction of, Amazon's capital or Apple's market cap. And it's not like they're going to own all fitness equipment. So it's a little bit easier to get through, but yeah, this is going to be a challenging one, and it could be painful for the company if they can't find a suitor.
Yep.
Right.
Well, we, on that note, are going to get to my quick interview with Craig Zingerlein, someone who has yet to even suffer through, has yet to even imagine having issues that are that come up when you get acquired, by SoftBank for $32 billion. Craig Zingerlein from Growth University is a member. We're doing these quick interviews just so you are aware. You'll hear, I think, one a week for the next
5 weeks.
5 weeks. 5 weeks,
maybe. Yeah.
Quick interviews with people who are currently in our accelerator cohort, which is cohort number 24. Craig founded Growth University and is a 3-time accelerator vet.
Yeah.
And
he went with Red Tricycle and then with his marketing company and now with Growth University. Votion was his company. Yeah. Which is still going.
Very cool.
Yeah.
He is trying to, much like we're very aligned. He's trying to grow the entrepreneur universe and help more businesses succeed. More shots on goal.
Yeah. And, if you look at what trips up most startups, after they get product market fit and they've got a product that people actually get some value from, what separates companies at that point, there's another starting line, which is how good are you at growth, your go-to market strategy, acquiring new customers and those techniques. And that's what he's focusing on, is teaching people how to learn how to grow their startup. So I'm really excited to hear your interview, Molly.
Yeah, here he is, Craig Zingerlein.
Boom. Okay. Intro.
Take it away.
Okay.
Cool.
3, 2. Okay, everybody, we have a huge show for you today. First up, Bolt CEO Ryan Breslau is back in the news again. Today, he's talking about stock options, which we'll break down the arguments on both sides.
Then we're going to briefly cover, there are so many, by the way, and so many Twitter dunks. Then we will briefly cover NVIDIA's ARM acquisition falling through and whether that is another big SoftBank bet that might need a repricing.
And finally, Molly's going to interview Craig Zingerlein from Growth University. This is one of the companies in our accelerator currently. We're going to be sharing with you a couple of those companies so you can get to know them early. It's going to be a great episode.
Stick with us.
All right. We did it.
We did it.
What's happening? Surge Dog asked, "What's happening with the old Twist Studio? Should it turn to some sort of hub?" Well, like I was like, maybe I should sell this or whatever. But probably selling San Francisco real estate right now is not a great idea. Or maybe it's actually
in the specific location.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a terrible location. It's not. It's not the Tenderloin, but
no.
It's actually a pretty good That's actually an up and coming location. They're building I don't know if you've been there recently. Oh, you haven't been there recently. You remember the dog park or there was a bunch of warehouses over there and like parking lots. Those are all being turned into skyscrapers. Not skyscrapers, like 12-story, 8-story luxury apartments. So I think actually that little building is going to become super valuable because it'll probably get knocked down to put a bigger building up at some point. We get bought out, or just that neighborhood's going to have all fancy restaurants. It's going to basically turn into.
I think it would be funny if you did a different style of podcast where you talked about your experiences dealing with San Francisco homeowners associations.
Oh yeah.
And trying to put a Tesla charger in the garage.
I mean, literally, they fought me because they're like, "Well, if everybody got a Tesla charger, this is the socialism I'm dealing with. It's not democratic socialism; it's pure socialism.
Yeah.
I'm trying to put the charger in. I'm like, hey, I got to put 2 chargers.
It's authoritarianism.
2 years of like going back and forth. They said, listen, there's not enough electricity. I was like, in San Francisco. They're like, no, coming into the building. I'm like, sure there is. And they're like, there's not enough electricity for all 30 spots in the building to get a high-speed charger. I'm like, there's only 3 Teslas down there. I'm going to put 2 in. People can share my Tesla charger. I don't care. They can even use it for free. I don't care. And they're like, yeah, but if everybody gets one, the building doesn't have enough electricity. I'm like, well, we can get the building upgraded. They're like, yeah, but why should you get it? And I'm like,
wow.
You have no choice but to get it. I'm going to fucking sue you, maniacs. And I will
disincentivizing.
Destroy the entire fucking building's co-op in legal bills. Yeah. Do you want me to do that? And they're like...
And also, do you want me to just go on Twitter and be like, this is the San Francisco building owner that's disincentivizing green energy and
And it's a bunch of maniacs in my building. Then I put up security cameras that are the Deep Sentinel ones. That if you stand in front of them, a live security guard is like, hey, do I need to call the police? Can I help you? Or welcome, FedEx. You can leave that there. Do better.
Nailed it.
Exactly. I was like, I'm going to drop a hammer on these maniacs.
Oh my God.
And because I'm when you're part of the co-op board, you know the finances. And the finances were such that like if I sued them, they would go bankrupt. So I'm like, why would you want me to do that? So then they're like, can you can't have a camera there. I'm like, 7 people have Ring doorbells. They're like, yeah, but those Ring doorbells are only in front of your door. Yours looks down the hall. I'm like, so does my neighbor not want my security camera to cover them? Because I can put it on the other side and point the other way down the hall and they'll have no coverage by my security camera. So they get broke into, I can't give them the tape. And they're like, well, did you ask them? I'm like, no, but you're on the other floor complaining about this bullshit, Karen. She said, my name's not Karen. I'm like, okay, Karen, you can go knock on my neighbor's door. Really? Until that time, my cameras are saying
today.
I mean, I chose violence today. Okay, let's go. We got to go do a...
You really did. I know. We got to hear pitches. And I have to pee.
Thanks, Nick, for triggering me.
I'm out of time. All right, you guys are great.
Triggering me.
Okay, bye. Favorite topics.
Oh, Jesus fucking Christ.
I know. The best Jason is all-out war Jason. That is true. All right, bye.